What advice would you give to any bank implementing an NMRF solution?
The key requirement here is actually around the process of collecting executed trade and committed quote data. And many firms have started that process by coming up with hypotheses over where they think the challenges are going to be. And those challenges aren't always where you would expect. So at Thomson Reuters, we have commenced a process of collecting a data set and analysing that to see what trends that we could find. So the recommendations and feedback I provide are based on this data set. So just to set the scene, we collected a data set which is based on, firstly, OTC data. So we wanted to replicate the kind of areas where there'd be a challenge. We've used multiple sources of data. So this isn't just a single data set, this is multiple sets of data combined together into one cleansed and processed data set. And it also is designed to represent those instruments that are more challenging or likely to be more challenging to pass the compliance test. And as we looked at that data set, we started to understand what was going on in the real world. And that gave us rise to some really, really interesting themes or topics that we identified. And those were both at the instrument level. Where do we think the drop-off in modelability really takes place? What's going to pass and what's going to fail? And it was also thematic. What's going on with the industry? What are the key characteristics that we see in the data? And two of the areas which we found really interesting, I'll touch on now. So the first one is with the process of collecting data and trying to demonstrate the fact that you pass the NMRF requirements, you're probably going to combine multiple data sets together. And in the process of doing so, you might end up with duplicates. There's no way you can guarantee, unless you had all the attributes, that your data is completely clean. And so in this respect, one of the key things for us to test is how do we remove those duplicates in a way that doesn't impact the quality of the data set. So we ran a very, very simple test. We took our data, we removed every example for a given instrument where we saw more than one observation on a given day. So if we saw 20 or 30 or 40 observations on a day, we just were left with one. And that means for liquid instruments, we took out an awful lot of data, and for liquid instruments, we took out very, very little data. And the key question instead is, what does that do to our ability to pass this compliance test? And that's where it gets really interesting. Even though we took out an awful lot of the data, it had no negative impact on our ability to pass the test. Absolutely none. So there wasn't a scenario where we saw removing that data reduce the modelability. And the key reason for that is, it's not the number of observations you have that determines whether you pass, it's the number of days in which you have observations. And so the more days in which you have observations, the more you are to pass the compliance test. So the first one is removal of duplicates isn't as difficult as you'd expect. And the second area which we thought was really interesting was seasonality. So with a lot of firms, they're very concerned with during holiday periods, instruments trade less. And it's not surprising. You come to Christmas, what happens? People go on holiday. You come to summer holidays, people go away. It's really easy to expect or to identify that trading activity is less frequent during certain times of the year. And again, when we looked at it, we were really surprised. We didn't see big drops in the level of activity in December. We didn't see big drops in level of activity in July and August, which is what we expected. We saw some evidence of it, but it wasn't as pronounced. And that seemed really suspicious to us, and we couldn't quite believe the result. So we went back and we looked at the data on a day-by-day basis. And when we looked at it day by day, we saw some really, really big impacts. No one trades at Christmas. No one's there, everyone's gone home. No one trades at Easter, no one trades 4th of July. There's key periods when no one trades, but it's not for a whole month no one trades. People trade in December, people just don't trade during Christmas. And so the impact is actually much, much less severe than you would expect. So the impact on modelability is much, much more moderated. So my key message for people who are designing NMRF solutions would be really take a look at the data. The data will tell you an awful lot about what is going to pass and what is going to fail as a compliance test, and actually your hypotheses might be based on really, really sensible logic, may not play out in reality.